Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Of course, the ecology of the Undead Empire is not the focus of Sumu. Even if the number of humans and other races living in the Undead Empire is greater, and the power of belief provided is greater, it is not a problem that Sumu needs to consider at present. He just couldn't help sighing because the contrast was too huge and too wonderful. In the entire Undead Empire, there are only 2 points that need Suma's attention. First, the 9 consuls. The so-called 9 consuls were the 9 supreme rulers of the Undead Empire. Before Sumu appeared, Willis was the Lich King at the pinnacle of the legendary rank, ranking 7th among the 9 archons. Actually, the 9 consuls, from 5th to 9th, are all the pinnacles of the legendary rank, and the top 4 consuls are all sanctuaries. An Undead Empire with 4 undead bosses at the sanctuary level have at least 5 undead bosses at the pinnacle of legendary ranks, coupled with the larger number of legendary ranks, epic ranks, and even the undead of other ranks. These are the key to such a strange force as the Undead Empire, which can gain a foothold in the Anriel continent. Simply put, the fist is big enough. Second, Dark Tita. When he was a player in his previous life, Sumu had never come into contact with the Titan race. It's not just him, all the players have probably never come into contact with the Titan race. That is, after being reborn as a monster in this life, from Argus, from Nefarian, and even from many ancient books, Sumu has only heard of this race Titan, a race active in the last mythical age. According to legend, the Titans are the sons of the ancient gods, a legendary race that surpasses the dragons. The dragon clan still needs to grow, and the Titan clan has only passed the infancy, so it must be the existence of the legendary rank. After reaching adulthood, it is not impossible for a Titan to become an advanced 600 sanctuary or a demigod. It was such a powerful race, but with the end of the last mythical age, it disappeared into history. Dark Titan, which is clearly not a race. As for whether this Dark Titan is really from the last mythical age, the legacy of the Titan family is still like the first evil god, Immortal King, that Sumu encountered. Just a title. It is unknown. 9 consuls, 4 sanctuaries, Dark Titan, the second evil god. After smoothing out these basic information about the Undead Empire, Sumu was a little overwhelmed. He left the Anduin continent and went to the New World, in order to find a higher level of power, so that he could enter the sanctuary, or even a demigod in the shortest time. Not to mention the plane of death. The Anriel continent with the existence of a sanctuary undoubtedly satisfies this condition. 10. The existence of the Undead Empire, whether it is the 4 undead spirits in the sanctuary, or the enshrined evil god Dark Titan, seems to contain great danger. Sanctuary is fine. With Suma's current strength, even if he is not the opponent of the 4 sanctuary undead, he is confident that he can protect himself. But the mysterious Dark Titan. After thinking about it, Sumu asked, what happened to the Dark Titan? Being enslaved by Sumu and becoming Suma's younger brother, Willis naturally knew everything he could say. Subordinates only know that when the Undead Empire was established, the belief in the Dark Titan already existed. In other words, the entire Undead Empire was established by the first consul, for the belief in the Dark Titan. A long time ago, the first consul once said that only by stepping into the sanctuary can you be qualified to know the secrets of the Dark Titan. At the same time, only when you step into the sanctuary are you eligible to go to the plane of death freely without being attacked by all kinds of terrifying monsters, born in the plane of death. Is it related to the plane of death? Sumu nodded slightly. No wonder Willis laughed when he saw him, and Nefarian set foot on the floating continent. It seems, the plane of death is not only unfriendly to himself and Nefarian, but also unfriendly to all foreign undead, who have never entered the sanctuary. But only after entering the sanctuary can you be qualified to know the secrets of the Dark Titan. Entering the sanctuary can freely enter the plane of death without being attacked. Inexplicably, Sumu thought of the mountain arm, and of the terrifying figure that caught a glimpse of him. That terrifying figure who does not know how many thousand feet tall is the Dark Titan of the souls of the Undead Empire. Seemingly aware of Suma's thoughts, Willis hurriedly said, Lord, the figure on the plane of death is not a Dark Titan. The first consul once mentioned that the figure, the reality of the plane of death, shows transformation. It is the incarnation of the world of the plane of death. If given an official name, that figure should be called the Mountain Giant. No. Sumu nodded slightly and continued, what else do you know about the plane of death? Willis hurriedly said, Lord, although the subordinates have the spatial coordinates to go to the plane of death, they can go to the plane of death freely. But all along, the subordinates have just huddled on the floating island to do some experiments or collect materials. Farther away, the first consul had warned, and his subordinates did not dare to set foot in rashly, saying that Willis was a little ashamed. Speaking of, I still have to face those sanctuary archons. Sumu sighed slightly. Only when you step into the sanctuary can you be qualified to know the secrets of the Dark Titan. When you step into the sanctuary, you are qualified to freely enter and exit the plane of death. If he could not step into the sanctuary in a short time, the only way for Sumu to solve the mystery was to confront the sanctuary archons of the Undead Empire. Get ready. We go to the City of the Dead. The City of Death is the imperial capital of the Undead Empire. This imperial capital is not located in the center of the Undead Empire, but at the border between the Undead Empire and the human world. It's actually quite understandable. The imperial capital of the human empire is located in the center of the empire. On the one hand, it is for the convenience of rule, and on the other hand, it is for safety, preventing the enemy from launching a war and attacking and capturing the imperial capital with the fastest speed. Undead Empire is different. The 9 archons are the strongest beings in the entire Undead Empire. Those creatures in the Undead Empire not only do not need to protect the imperial capital, but are the objects that the powerful undead in the imperial capital want to protect. Thus, it is easy to understand that the City of the Dead is built on the border of the empire at the same time. The City of Death is also the only city in the entire Undead Empire that has only undead and no living beings. As one of the 9 political officials, although Willis' strength is weak in Suma's view, he is indeed the Lich King in full force. This cemetery, which cannot be seen at a glance, is just a hidden stronghold of Willis, used to hide his phylactery. That is, the broken sword of the holy artifact level. Actually, as the 7th ranked consul among the 9 consuls, Willis not only has his own city, but also manages a vast territory of the empire. Only when everything is left to the undead to complete, all Willis needs to do is only the collective prayer of the many creatures in the territory under his jurisdiction once a month. There is a hidden teleportation circle in this graveyard. Through the teleportation array, you can reach the Lich City ruled by Willis. Then, through the teleportation formation of Lich City, you can successfully arrive at the imperial capital of the Undead Empire, the City of Death. Subsequently, after leaving the tomb and meeting with Nefarian, Willis took Sumu and Nefarian directly to the teleportation array he had hidden, opened the teleportation array, and teleported to the Lich City. Until you reach the Lich City, only then did Sumu discover how far this Undead Empire, or the undead force in this world, has developed. The Undead Empire has existed for more than 200 years. In the past 200 years, except for the 1st, 2nd and 4th consuls, that have not been replaced, the other consuls either died in the war with humans and other races, or left in order to break through to a higher realm. Undead Empire, over 200 years of existence. The greatest significance of the Undead Empire is not how many intelligent creatures it has taken in and multiplied, nor how much faith it has provided for that Dark Titan. The greatest significance of this empire to the Anreal continent, it provides a huge refuge for the intelligent undead on the entire continent. For example, Anduin continent, the only large-scale undead in the entire continent, is the City of the Undead built by Argus. It is precisely because of the City of the Undead that Argus has the title of Sage of the Undead. Before the arrival of Sumu, there were only 2 legends, 3 epics and millions of undead in the City of the Dead. So, what about the other undead born over countless years in Anduin? Either, like mist, it is hidden in places that are difficult for ordinary people to reach. Among the undead souls that were destroyed, there may not be those with great potential, enough to advance to the legendary rank, or even to enter the sanctuary. Just because there is no room to grow, they have difficulty growing. The Anreal continent is different. With the Empire of the Undead, a force that is enough to match the enemy and other living races, it provides the greatest degree of protection for the undead of the entire Anreal continent, the intelligent undead. The undead born in the Undead Empire, naturally needless to say, the undead born in other places, especially the intelligent undead, traveled to the Undead Empire from the place where they were born. Of course, it was difficult, but once they reach the Undead Empire, you can almost grow up. Years of accumulation and repeated growth have allowed this Undead Empire, which lasted for only more than 200 years, to accumulate countless intelligent undead. It also provided a steady stream of follow-up talents for the Undead Empire. So, when following Willis to the Lich City, Sumu saw a scene in the city that shocked him. In terms of combat power, Willis ranks very low among the 9 major consuls of the Undead Empire, and may even be the weakest 1 or 2. The reason why he is the 7th consul, not the 9th consul, is not because of his combat power, but because of the particularity of the Lich race. Lich clan, it can be said that it is the race that needs to be learned the most among all the undead races. A weak Lich might not even be able to defeat even the skeletons of the rank A powerful lich might be able to defeat several, or even more undead of the same rank at the same time. The key is the knowledge and skills that the lich masters. The more knowledge you learn and the more skills you master, the more powerful a lich becomes. Of course, the most important significance of Willis to the Undead Empire is not combat power. With 4 sanctuaries, at least 5 peak legends, as well as many legendary undead and epic undead, Willis' combat power is still unpliable. His most important significance to the Undead Empire is the Lich family's own job, research. So, this is what Sumu saw when he arrived at the Lich City. In this not too big city, there are corpses, lichs, or necromancers walking on the streets. Corpses, lich or necromancers are forged in the blacksmith shop, tailor shops, grocery store, mage tower, basically a corpse witch. Lich or necromancer inside. City of Lichs. This is the name of the city. Very apt, because of the figures that appeared in this city. Except for a very small number of necromancers, most of them were lich or corpse witch, who was about to become a lich, but it has a more apt name. That is a city of research, a city of knowledge, or a city of alchemy. The significance of the Lich City to the Undead Empire is equivalent to the significance of the Magic Research Institute to a human empire. The significance of Willis to the Undead Empire is equivalent to the significance of the director of the Magic Research Institute to a human empire. The knowledge and skills he has mastered, as well as the numerous archliches, lichs, corpses and necromancers under Willis' command, are the key to his becoming the 7th consul. At the same time, after entering the Lich City, Sumu also thoroughly saw the huge heritage of an undead empire that had existed for more than 200 years. At a glance, just in the square near the teleportation array, he saw 5 or 6 epic ranked archliches, and more than a dozen lord ranked lichs, not to mention the huge number of corpses and necromancers. Seeing this, Sumu is really envious. How many legendary ranks and epic ranks does the City of Bones have? Even the entire Anduin continent has how many legendary ranks and epic ranks of undead? I am afraid that even a lich city can't compare. How long did it take Sumu to build the City of Bones from scratch? If there is an undead empire as the backing, I am afraid he can pull out several skeletons as the base camp for the undead and undead camp players in a month. All the way, watch all the way. By the time they arrived at Willis City Lord's mansion, 5 Lich Kings appeared in front of Sumu, 2 lower-ranking legends, 1 middle-ranking legend and 1 upper-ranking legend. When Willis' rank fell from the peak legend to the middle legend, these 5 Lich Kings are also the most qualified to threaten Willis, and the most qualified to replace Willis Lich City Lord, and the 7th ruler officer's position. Of course, now that Willis has become his little brother, Sumu naturally has to help him solve this trouble. With Willis' assistance, Sumu soon enslaved the 5 Lich Kings and turned them into his younger brothers. As before, the 5 Lich Kings, mainly Willis, assisted him in ruling the Lich City and the vast swaths of the empire around it. At the same time, the surrender of Willis and these 5 Lich Kings also means that the entire Undead Empire, 1/9 of the power and territory, has been brought into Sumu's control in a practical sense. Next, he also read the memories of the 5 Lich Kings one by one, stored them in his mind, and slowly digested and absorbed them when they had time. Only then did Sumu and Nefarian embark on the teleportation again under the guidance of Willis. Away, to the capital of the Undead Empire, the City of Death. The City of Death is not so much the capital of the Undead Empire as it is a huge fortress. Come out of the teleportation array, the first thing Sumu saw was a huge statue dozens of meters high. This statue, it is a giant with muscles attacking layer by layer, with a strong dark aura surrounding his body, and his skin is engraved with various patterns, roaring up to the sky. From its blurred face, Sumu could vaguely recognize that this giant was the Dark Titan of the Undead Empire's beliefs. Behind the square where the Titan statue is located, there is a quaint but magnificent hall. This hall is not only the temple of the Dark Titan, but also the highest power center of the Empire. When there is war or other urgent matters, the 9 consuls of the Empire hold meetings in this hall. Except for the 2 most conspicuous buildings, all that's left is a large barracks. Skeletons, ghosts, liches, death knights and more. Almost all undead races Sumu can think of can be found in the City of the Dead, and not just quantity, but quality. Just as the perception spread, and after a general sense, Sumu felt that there are at least hundreds of undead bosses who have entered the legendary rank in this City of Death. Should I say, is it the imperial capital of the Undead Empire? While observing the entire City of Death, Sumu and Nefarian were also led by Willis and walked towards the Imperial Palace. When they arrived at the Imperial Palace, there are already 7 figures waiting there. As the 7th consul of the Undead Empire, Willis is naturally qualified to convene the other 8 consuls to initiate important discussions. It's just that there will be a few consuls responding, and Willis can't control it. This time, in order to allow all the 8 consuls to be present, Willis deliberately obscured the reason for launching an important meeting, and only said that he had something important to announce at the meeting. So, when Willis brought Sumu and Nefarian into the hall, the other 7 figures were already sitting in their places in the hall. Only the top of the hall, which belongs to the position of the first consul, is still vacant. His eyes swept across the hall. Combining the information obtained from Willis, Sumu was observing these several archons of the Undead Empire. The 9th official, the Bone Dragon Knight, the legendary pinnacle, is the only dark professional in the Undead Empire who stepped into the Imperial Hall as a human and became one of the 9 major consuls, ruling all the dark professionals in the Empire. 0. Ask for Flowers. The 8th consul, the Dwarf Skeleton, the legendary pinnacle, is the only great forging master in the Empire, the city lord of the City of Forging and the controller of the Dwarf Skeleton tribe. The weapons and equipment of the entire Undead Empire came from the forging city of this dwarf forging master. 7th Archon, Willis, the 6th consul, the Bone Demon Spider, the legendary pinnacle, is also the master of all beasts, including insects, etc., undead in the entire empire. The 5th consul, the Dark Sacrifice, the legendary pinnacle, is also the host and supreme controller of all the rituals to sacrifice to the Dark Titans in the entire empire. The 4th consul, Nightmare Scythe, Sanctuary Assassin, commanding the Thorns of Darkness. He has sneaked into the battlefield countless times to assassinate the highest commander of the enemy camp, and has never missed. The 3rd consul, the King of Banshees, the Ghost of the Sanctuary. At the same time, he is also the master of all ghostly undead in the entire empire. The 2nd official, Rhoda Monroe, whose occupation is unknown, his race is unknown, and the undead in the sanctuary. He is over 2 meters 5, and his entire slender body is wrapped in a layer of gray-white ribbons, exuding an ominous aura. 8 consuls. Glancing over the 8 consuls one by one, Sumu finally had a general understanding of the supreme ruler of the Undead Empire. The 5th to 9th consuls don't have to worry too much. Suma's strength at this time has surpassed them. The 4th and 3rd consuls, 2 sanctuaries. One is the Sanctuary Assassin, and the other is the Sanctuary Ghost. Ask yourself, even if it is not the opponent of the two, Sumu can protect himself, at least remain undefeated. Rhoda Monroe. When facing the undead in the sacred realm, like the mummy in the legend of the real world, Sumu could clearly feel an aura of danger. That is to say, if you go up against the 2nd consul, he will definitely not be an opponent. Finally, the 1st consul. When his eyes shifted from the 2nd consul to the top of the hall, Sumu suddenly discovered that a figure had appeared on the originally empty seat. That figure is not tall, like a normal human figure, but that figure is extremely illusory. It is a human shape outlined by a circle of faint blue flames. At this time, sitting on the tallest stone high back chair, the human figure outlined by the faint blue flames seemed to have appeared in this world, and it seemed like it had never appeared before. Glancing over, Sumu could clearly see the figure, but can't find the trace of that figure's existence at all. The 1st consul. No name, no title, no occupation, no information, except for the ring of faint blue flames. No one knows what kind of undead the 1st consul is, let alone any other information about this 1st consul. All undead only know the empire of the undead was established by the 1st consul. The belief in the Dark Titan was also promoted by the 1st consul, and no objection is allowed. At the same time, since the establishment of the Undead Empire, or in other words, since he appeared on the continent of Ariel, this unknown, mysterious and powerful undead, the only name is the 1st consul. If we assume, in the face of the 5th to 9th consuls, Suma's strength is enough to crush them, and defeat them in a very short period of time. In the face of the 3rd and 4th consuls, even if Sumu cannot defeat them, if he wins, he can remain undefeated. In the face of Rhoda Monroe, the 2nd consul, Sumu was more than self-sufficient, but basically impossible to defeat. And facing the 1st consul, danger, crisis, fear. This is how Sumu feels. When facing the 1st consul, Sumu felt that he was not facing a sanctuary undead, but a world. He even suspects, in front of the 1st consul, does he have time to release the phase shift? Even if he releases the phase shift, can he successfully escape from the sight of the 1st consul? 63. Invincible, even. Don't be an enemy. This is how Sumu felt when he met the 1st consul. Sumu was observing the 8 consuls, and the 8 consuls, including the 1st consul, were also observing Sumu. The 1st consul has not yet spoken. The other 7 consuls didn't speak either, but looked at Sumu and Nefarian with scrutiny. Eyes take a few steps forward. Willis bowed slightly to the 1st consul on the high back chair, and said, I have seen the 1st consul. The faint blue flame human figure nodded slightly, and a slight soul fluctuation spread along with it. Willis bit. Is that what you want to announce? That's right. Even though the first consul had great power, Willis had been enslaved by Sumu after all. When the first consul asked, Willis said softly, the old man has already recognized the Lord as the Lord. This time, I came to announce that my colleagues, from now on, the Emperor will be the 7th consul of the Empire. No one objected. The Empire of the Undead is like this. The capable ones come first. For more than 200 years, the Imperial consuls have changed again and again. Among them, there are many consuls who were killed by other undead and replaced them, and became new consuls. As long as it doesn't involve the areas and fields they rule, generally speaking, other consuls don't care whether a consul is beheaded, replaced by a latcomer, or takes the initiative to abdicate. So did the first consul. For this unfathomable terrifying undead, maintaining the faith of the Empire is the first priority. Secondly, maintaining the existence and stability of the Empire. There is no shortage of undead in the Anreal continent. There is no shortage of latecomers in the Undead Empire. As long as the new consul doesn't betray the Undead Empire, or do things that endanger the Undead Empire, he will also ignore it. The weak will eat the strong, and the able will come first. This is the survival law of the Undead family. Even all the Archons felt that Willis was making a fuss. This kind of consul change thing, just send a message. There is no need to call them all together. As long as the sacrificial ceremony can be carried out as scheduled, as long as the Lich City can continue to operate, as long as it is within the jurisdiction of the Lich City and the Lich City, even if Willis chooses to push a corpse witch to the 7th place, the position of the consul also has nothing to do with them. This point, but Sumu misunderstood the particularity of the Undead clan, and the Undead Empire determines that the replacement of the highest ruling class, the consul, is far less complicated than the human world, or the real world, but since it's here, there's still going to be some cutscenes. Little by little, he let out his aura, and no longer concealed his strength at all. Sumu bowed slightly to the first consul, then walked towards the position that belonged to Willis but now belongs to him, and sat down. Nefarian was under the pressure of the undead spirits in the sanctuary, and did not dare to move forward, so he obediently came down at the entrance of the hall. Willis followed Suma's side, standing behind the high back chair that belonged to Sumu. This moment, the attitudes of those consuls finally paid attention. The 4 legendary peak archons looked at Sumu in shock, seeing that this head was clearly a legendary rank. The aura that was revealed was far more than their new archon. Even the 2 sanctuaries, Nightmare Scythe and Banshee King, felt a little dignified after feeling the aura emanating from Sumu. The only one not affected is Rhoda Monroe. This tall mummy is like a real mummy. From the beginning of the meeting to the present, it has been sitting in its place motionless, like a corpse. As mentioned above, the Undead family is a typical predator of the weak, and the capable ones come first. They will not care if a consul, who is not related to them, is replaced, but a powerful consul appears in their ranks. But every consul should pay attention to it. Rare 0. These several consuls all nodded slightly to Sumu, expressing their goodwill. Even the first consul. This human figure, which was completely constructed from finely broken blue flames, seemed to have a smile on his face, and the slight fluctuation of his soul spread out. The 7th consul has a good strength. I look forward to the day when you step into the sanctuary. Also looking forward to one day, you will really join us. Subsequently, the shattered blue flames that formed the human form gradually dimmed, and the first consul who created the Undead Empire with one hand, and was the real ruler of the Undead Empire until now, quietly disappeared. The first consul disappeared. The second consul got up, nodded slightly to Sumu, and with an ominous aura, he left the Imperial Hall slowly and quickly. This was followed by the 3rd and 4th consuls. But when the 2 sanctuary archons were about to leave the Imperial Palace, Sumu said, "Wait 2. In a few days, this king has a secret that he wants to discuss with the 2 of them. He is undecided whether he can move to the Lich City." Nightmare Mouth. The sickle's body paused slightly, and after a note came out, the slender figure turned into a shadow, and disappeared from the Imperial Hall. The Banshee King also chuckled, and said that he left the Imperial Palace, after waiting for the news of Sumu on 5.5. Then, in the entire Imperial Hall, only Sumu, Willis, Nefarian, and 4 other consuls who had not yet entered the sanctuary were left. The top 4 archons can ignore Sumu because they have that power. The 4 consuls, even as an undead, he knows the truth of respecting the strong and making friends with the strong. Moreover, this mighty skeleton is already the 7th consul of the Empire and their colleague. After a few simple chats, Sumu applied for a trip to the area they ruled. "I just joined the Undead Empire, and understand the composition of the Empire, so that I can better serve the Empire. The real reason is, Sumu, take a fancy to the huge cake of the Undead Empire, A few days later, Undead Empire. It belongs to the dark area under the jurisdiction of the sixth archon, the skeleton spider. In the skeleton jungle, a cold light flashed, and a huge spider leg flew into the air, falling away from a distance, knocking down a few dead trees with only branches left. Skeleton jungle. In the center of a huge and broken spider web, a skeleton demon spider with a height of more than 10 meters was entrenched in the spider web, and angrily roared, "Sumu, you dare to kill this queen? Aren't you afraid of attracting the wrath of the first consul?" Of the 8 spider legs, only 3 remain. 2 huge claws, only 1 left. The cobwebs throughout the entire skeleton jungle were also torn out of huge holes. Around the bone demon spider, there are a large number of epic ranks, lord ranks, and even the broken figures of lower rank animal undead. This was the state of the skeleton jungle 5 minutes after the match against Sumu 2 days. Starting from the 9th rank dark professional bone dragon knight, Sumu visited and challenged these archons. With his current strength, it is naturally easy to defeat this undead boss at the pinnacle of legendary ranks. After victory came slavery. In the past 2 days, Sumu has enslaved the Bone Dragon Knight and the Dwarf Skeleton Leader respectively, and also enslaved the subordinates of the legendary ranks under their command, bringing the territory they ruled into his own control. The 6th official, the Bone Demon Spider, was the 3rd object Sumu wanted to enslave. The power of the Undead Empire shocked Sumu. The prosperity of the Undead Empire also makes Sumu envious. When it is determined that the first consul is not in this world, unless something major happens, it will never come, and the second consul has always been entrenched in his own tomb. After not asking about the world, Sumu formulated this plan. Visit these consuls. He also brought these consuls and the legendary ranks under their command into their own command one by one. Turn this mighty and prosperous undead empire into your own. Hard to imagine. A mere skeleton of the legendary rank dared to fight the idea of a huge empire with a digital sanctuary and many legends, but his super strength, the absolute enslavement of his talent, and the fact that the various consuls of the Undead Empire do not interfere with each other and have little contact with each other have allowed Sumu to find this opportunity. So, this is the scene in front of me. In the skeleton jungle, Sumu moved forward step by step. Not far in front of him, the skeleton demon spider was full of anger. The power of Sumu, it had long been foreseen, but it was far from expecting that this strange skeleton, who had never stepped into the peak of the legend, was so powerful. From Sumu's appearance to now, it has only been 5 minutes in total. In this short 5 minutes, nearly 10 legendary rank undead beasts under its command were crippled, and more epic rank and lord rank undead were torn apart, and even its own body was smashed, hit hard. Entangled in this huge spider web, the skeleton demon spider did not dare to leave easily. Within the range covered by the cobwebs, it can also use its own talents to move quickly and avoid repeated attacks if it leaves the range of the cobwebs. I'm afraid it will be even more difficult to resist Sumu's elusive displacement skills. Sumu got closer. The pair of eyes of the skeleton demon spider were full of horror. It jumped with only 3 spider legs left, appeared from the center of the spider web to the edge of the spider web, and howled angrily again. Sumu, step out. The distance to the skeleton demon spider was instantly shortened by a large margin. Sumu, holding a bone sword in one hand, continued to move forward and chuckled. It is precisely because we do not belong to each other that this king appears here. The 9th and 8th consuls have already recognized this king as the master. Next, it will be your 6th consul. Suddenly, the pair of spider eyes of the bone demon spiders were full of disbelief. You want to betray the first consul? Of course not. Sumu replied indifferently. The first consul is not only the founder of the empire, but also the biggest backer of the empire. This king believes that his strength is good, and he does not have the confidence to challenge the first consul. No one betrays the empire, and no one will harm the interests of the empire. This king just used to hold the power in his own hands. Real. Just like that. The bone demon spider is suspicious. The skeleton demon spider is very sure that he is not the opponent of the 7th consul. It is even more certain that if the 7th consul hadn't kept his hands again and again, it would have been beheaded long ago. If it persists, it will surely die, but if the purpose of the 7th consul is not to control the empire, but to resist the first consul, he has no chance of death. 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th. Suddenly, the pair of skeleton demon spiders opened their eyes wide and blurted out, do you want to deal with the 4th and 3rd consuls? Do you want to become a dimension demon? Really? What do you know? Sumu raised his brows and chuckled. No one has betrayed the empire, and no one wants to challenge the first consul. What this king pursues is only power. Feeling that he had guessed the idea of the 7th consul, the emotions of the skeleton spider also became cloudy. Among the dead, it is normal for the weak to be enslaved by the strong. Skeletal spiders are not proud death knights, nor pedantic lichs. Growing up from a magic spider at the bottom, it knows better than other undead that existence is the foundation of everything. $0. No need to face the first consul. It's not really betraying the empire. It seems that being enslaved by such a strong man is not unacceptable. At least, better than dying here. After careful consideration, the bone demon spider spoke again. How can I trust you in this future? You can only believe. Su-mu laughed. Nefarian, Willis, the 9th consul, the 8th consul. They are also enslaved by this king, except that they need to accept the order of this king when necessary. They are not all alive. Is it all right? This sentence is like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Between being enslaved and disappearing, the bone spider finally chose to survive. Subsequently, Su-mu stepped forward. When the unknown energy eroded the body and soul of the skeleton spider, the 4th imperial consul was enslaved by Su-mu and became his younger brother. After doing all this, Su-mu began to ask, what is the dimension demon? Having been enslaved by Su-mu, the skeleton demon spider naturally has no reservations. Only as a legendary undead spider, the knowledge of the strong bone spider is extremely limited. It only knows that the dimension demon god is another evolutionary path different from the conferred god. How to become a dimensional demon god is a secret that is only qualified to know after entering the sanctuary. Just like the Dark Titan and the Plane of Death. Sanctuary. Su-mu nodded slightly. He already had the intention of taking action against the 4th and 3rd consuls, and the emergence of the evolutionary path of the dimensional demon god gave him more reason to take action against the 4th and 3rd consuls. Pack up and stay put. Without this king's order, everything remains as it is. After giving the order to maintain the status quo, Su-mu made a phase shift and left the gooey jungle. After Su-mu's figure disappeared, the skeleton demon spider slowly climbed down from the spider web, picked up the spider legs that it had broken, and reattached it. At the same time, it needs to recapture the beasts and transform them into beast undead. It also needs to re-incubate the magic spiders to supplement the strength of the magic spider family. Since the Lord has already said to maintain the status quo, then it must remain the same. After conquering the skeleton demon spider, and learning about the existence of the evolutionary path of the dimension demon god from its mouth, Su-mu returned to the Lich City. Of the 9 consuls, 4 have already fallen under his control. Next, he had to deal with the 3rd or 4th consul. The 5th consul. Su-mu did not intend to take action. As a dark sacrificial, the strength of the 5th consul may not be strong, but as the host of sacrifices and prayers for the entire empire, the 5th consul has the closest connection with the 1st consul, and even with the Dark Titan. He would rather face Rhoda Monroe, who is ranked the 2nd Archon, than face the dark sacrifice that may involve the 1st Archon, or even the Dark Titan at any time. 2 days. While Su-mu traveled for tens of thousands of miles, enslaving the 9th, 8th and 6th consuls, and subduing them into his own little brothers, Willis and the many Lich Kings and Grand Liches under his command were not idle either. They are remodeling an ancient tomb, to be exact. It is transforming an area within a radius of dozens of kilometers, with the ancient tomb as the center. Binding array, imprisonment array, sleeping array, weakening the magic circle, space blockade array, magic blockade array, etc. Almost all the magic circles that Willis and the Lich Kings could think of that could weaken a sanctuary undead were secretly inscribed on the ancient tombs, and the ancient tombs by Willis and the Lich King, with a group of big liches near the tomb. After doing all this, they covered these rune formations with hidden formations to cover their breath. Faced with the sanctuary, no matter how cautious it is, even with Su-mu's current strength, he couldn't guarantee that he would definitely be able to defeat a sanctuary undead. That is to say, there are many more Lich Kings and Grand Lichs under his command. With the preparation in advance, the Lich King headed by Willis is enough to weaken, bind or even imprison a sanctuary for a period of time, before Su-mu dares to be in the sanctuary. At this time, he made a move against a sanctuary otherwise. Letting away a sanctuary and disturbing the 1st consul is the last thing Su-mu wants to see. Su-mu returns. Willis also brought the Lich under his command, and prepared everything he could do to the extreme. Subsequently, Su-mu activated the unique communication method between the Archons, and passed the information that he wanted to convey to the 4th Archon, the Nightmare Scythe, and the content of that message is only 4 words. Dimensional Devil. Su-mu doesn't know what a dimension demon is, let alone how to become a dimension demon, but it doesn't matter. The Nightmare Scythe, who has already entered the sanctuary and is the 4th consul, must know. Su-mu needs. It's just to attract the undead of the sanctuary, and let him take the initiative to step into his own trap. Really, after receiving Su-mu's message, The Nightmare Scythe soon appeared in the teleportation formation of Lich City. Then, under the guidance of Willis, he headed towards the ancient tomb that was already full of various traps. Nightmare Scythe has no doubts. First, he and Sumu are both the consuls of the Undead Empire, and they belong to different territories and fields, so there is no need for conflict. Second, he is the undead in the sanctuary, and he is also the shadow assassin with the strongest life-saving and concealment capabilities. Nightmare Scythe never thought of Sumu, the newly promoted 7th consul, to deal with himself. Dimension Demon. This is a secret that only the sanctuary knows. It is the Nightmare Scythe himself who only obtained the secret of the dimensional demon god from the mouth of the 1st consul after entering the sanctuary. He was curious, how did this strange, legendary skeleton, who first came to the Undead Empire, know the secret of the Dimension Demon? So, when Willis, the former 7th consul, personally led him to leave the Lich City with the Nightmare Scythe and head to the ancient tomb far away from the Lich City, the Nightmare Scythe not only had no doubts, but was rather anxious soon. After a distance of hundreds of kilometers, Willis arrived at the ancient tomb with the Nightmare Scythe. Under the cover of many hidden magic circles, the sanctuary assassin also did not find the various rune magic circles inscribed in the ancient tomb. On the contrary, in the entire ancient tomb, except for Sumu and Willis, there were no other figures, and this lack of power also made the Nightmare Mirror put down its last vigilance. Dimensional Demon God. How much do you know? When appearing in the tomb, Nightmare Scythe asked with his blunt noise. Dimensional Demon God. It is precisely because I want to know the relevant information of the Dimensional Demon God that this king invited His Excellency the 4th consul. With a smile on Suma's face, he slightly bowed his hands to the Nightmare Scythe. Next moment, Willis quietly disappeared. The hidden magic circle in the ancient tomb failed, and countless runes flickered under the supply of pieces of magic crystal, turned into chains, and bound the nightmare locks in place. Bondage. Imprisoned. Fall asleep. Weaken, curse. Countless rune formations erupted. Even if it is already a undead at the sanctuary level, when the rune chains link him to his body, and when the rays of light of different colors are also shrouded in his body, the Nightmare Scythe still feels his body slightly stiff. A heartfelt feeling of weakness rose from the bottom of his heart. You want to betray? Do not. Interrupting the Nightmare Mirror's words, Sumu stepped forward and appeared behind the Nightmare Mirror. The gauntlet, which had already covered the unknown energy, stretched out towards the Nightmare Mirror's head, wanting to take this opportunity as soon as possible. Controlling his body, what this king wants is only a higher level of power. No surprises. Suma's arm successfully covered the head of the Nightmare Scythe just when he started to drive the unknown energy into the Nightmare Scythe's body. He was surprised to find that this body only had energy of. There is a sense of crisis. Not caring to erode the body of the Nightmare Mirror, Sumu stepped out again and appeared in the open space more than 10 meters away from the original standing position, and a slight spark also came out from the armor behind Sumu. At the same time, on Suma's skeleton armor, which is about to reach the quality of a holy artifact, there is an extra trace, assassin sneak attack. I don't know when the Nightmare Scythe that was bound has disappeared. It was replaced by a figure that kept flashing in the shadows, approaching Sumu at an extremely fast speed. Through the figure that kept flashing, Sumu could faintly see 2 dark red shorts held in the hands of the Nightmare Mirror blade. How can it be a fluke to become a sanctuary? From beginning to end, the Nightmare Scythe was extremely vigilant towards Sumu, a strange undead. The so-called unprepared, the so-called impatient, is just a disguise of the Nightmare Scythe. Even the figure that appeared in front of Willis was led by Willis, and was finally bound was not the body of Nightmare Scythe, but his shadow clone. The true mirror of nightmares has been lurking in the shadow of his own shadow clone. When the many rune magic circles were triggered, and when Sumu appeared unsuspecting behind the Shadow Avatar, ready to enslave the Shadow Avatar, the real Nightmare Scythe suddenly attacked. Only Sumu escaped the blow after all. His dark red double-edged blades, which were enough to inflict heavy damage on a sanctuary and easily break through a domain-level shield, only left a shallow scratch on Suma's armor. But Nightmare Scythe doesn't care. The strength displayed by the 7th consul is worthy of his attention, but it is only a matter of attention. When the trap fails, and without the assistance of other external forces, a skeleton that has not even stepped into the sanctuary is not even qualified to capture his figure. Front. The blurry figure kept flickering. At this moment, the Nightmare Scythe seems to have transformed into countless figures, attacking Sumu in all directions at the same time. Every attack leaves a trace on Suma's skeleton armor, and every attack makes Sumu hard to resist. Nightmare Scythe. The 4th Archon is worthy of his Nightmare Scythe title. Only, the Sanctuary Assassin, who was attacking furiously and leaving scars of different shades on Suma's body, did not notice that the 7th Archon who was desperately defending and resisting, was panic-stricken. The pupils of the faint blue shattering flames are extremely quiet. Step 2 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps. Almost every time the nightmare scythe waved the dark red short blade in his hand, Suma's body would be knocked back one step. As a legendary rank, Suma's body defense power, that is close to that of a sacred weapon, makes the nightmare mirror extremely surprised. But it's just astonishing. The double blade in his hand is a real holy weapon, and it has the triple effect of breaking spells, bleeding and penetrating. Not to mention it is just a comparison of the holy weapon. Even if the physical defense of the 7th archon really reaches the level of the holy weapon, it is also difficult to resist the repeated attacks of the double-edged. Slowly, there are more and more scars on Suma's skeletal armor. Slowly, there are also more and more notches on Suma's skeleton sword. He stepped back step by step, desperately resisting the dark red double-edged sword that struck again and again. It seems that it can't be stopped at least once. The dark red blades will pierce his armor, break through his defenses, and tear his body. Finally, when he retreated to the edge of the tomb, Sumu never retreated. The nightmare scythe was slightly overjoyed, and the dark red double-edged blade in his hand turned into two streams of light. One attacked the skeleton sword that Sumu had blocked again, and the other pointed directly at Suma's, faintly exposed outside the armor neck, completely ignoring the blow that hit the skeleton mob. When this attack from Nightmare Scythe came, Sumu lost the skeleton sword. He grabbed the dark red short blade that hit his neck with one hand, and let the short blade of the holy artifact cut his gauntlet and tore his hand bones. After falling, the short knife that attacked his body, his free hand. In the fleeting consternation of the nightmare mirror, he grabbed the neck of this sanctuary undead, Willis. It's now. Next moment, among the runes that had been extinguished, some of the runes shone again. Along with the shining of these runes, new rays of light came out in this tomb. Slow down, weaken. The effect of the rune formation that erupted this time was far lower than the first eruption of the rune formation, but the rune magic circle that erupted this time is all blessed with a wide range of negative effects. Even though the nightmare scythe was unparalleled in speed, and even though the nightmare mirror was invisible, when Sumu grabbed his neck, when the rune magic circle that spread throughout the tomb exploded, he was still hit. Perhaps, for a nightmare scythe, who specializes in the growth of the speed attribute, making the speed attribute a lot higher than that of Sumu, this triple negative effect has a very limited weakening effect on him. It was only a momentary delay for him, but all Sumu needs is this moment of sluggishness. Just the moment the nightmare scythe's body slumped slightly, Sumu activated his title effect. Strength, speed, constitution, spirit, quadruple judgment. As a sanctuary assassin, the speed attribute of the nightmare mirror is much higher than Sumu, but his other three attributes are far inferior to Sumu. When the judgment takes effect, the nightmare mirror's four-dimensional attribute immediately forcibly weakened by 30%. To know, among the weakened 30% four-dimensional attributes, the speed attribute is also included. Just an outbreak of the title effect. Nightmare Scythe was a lot higher than Suma's speed attribute, and it was immediately weakened to the same level as Sumu, or even lower than Sumu. However, this is not the end. For a moment of sluggishness, the four-dimensional attributes were forcibly weakened, making it more difficult for the sanctuary assassin to break free from Suma's grip. At this time, the surging magic value in the body erupted, and the extreme cold began to erupt from Suma's hands, spreading in all directions with him as the center, and the nightmare Jikian, who was strangled by the neck. Even more so, the extreme cold spreads. The deceleration effect that accompanied the cold air was used on the nightmare scythe again. The cold air that seemed to freeze the world gradually sealed the nightmare scythe's body. Frost covered his face. The ice layer sealed his body. In this confrontation between conspiracy and conspiracy, in this battle of calculation and counter-calculation, Sumu finally won the battle. Because super boss skills, Ice Age has erupted. Outside the tomb, when according to the agreement at the beginning, after activating the rune circle in the ancient tomb for the second time, Willis left the ancient tomb immediately, and even left the dozens of kilometers where the space blocking circle was arranged. Scope. Next, it was the battle between his lord and the nightmare scythe. He, the legendary Lich King, is a burden in front of this level of battle actually. Not just Willis. Near the range where he stayed, Nefarian and the other 5 Lich Kings were also watching the ancient tomb. They have all been enslaved. If the Lord wins, naturally everyone will be happy, and there will be a powerful sanctuary undead assassin in their camp. If the Lord loses, even the dead and souls will disappear together. Time flies. The space blockade array has been activated. The magic blockade array has also been activated. Through the barrier formed by this double circle, they can still see the specific situation of the ancient tomb. Subsequently, with a cold breath, the ancient tomb began to vibrate, and a touch of ice blue also emerged from the ancient tomb, and it grew rapidly. Just as they watched, an iceberg grew out of the tomb. Not just icebergs. Along with the icebergs, there's also the extremely cold freezing air that spreads. There are frosts, avalanches, glaciers, and cold currents. In just a few breaths, this ice and snow world has grown from ancient times. The tomb has spread to the edge of the double enchantment. It seems that it will break through the barrier at any time and drown them in it. No one moved because, when they were the last tens of meters away from the barrier, the rapidly spreading ice and snow world stopped. Not only is the frost, avalanche and glaciers no longer surging, the extreme freezing air is also slowly dissipating. Lord winds perhaps, because they are still there, they have not disappeared with the Lord. That is to say, their Lord really defeated, and even enslaved an undead assassin, who entered the sanctuary with the strength of the legendary rank, 603. Inside the tomb shout no. There are no more tombs. When the Ice Age broke out, the accompanying frosts, avalanches and glaciers had already destroyed the tomb, leaving only a snow white and ice blue at this time. Sumu is standing in the center of this ice and snow world. His left hand was still holding the dark red short blade that had pierced the gauntlet. His right hand, however, had passed through a thick layer of ice and slapped on the neck of the nightmare mirror. Nightmare Scythe still maintains its original action only. This sanctuary undead, whose four-dimensional attributes have been forcibly weakened by a full 30%, has been completely frozen by the extreme freezing air that erupted from the Ice Age for a short period of time. He has no chance of breaking free. 1. Even though he had simulated this process countless times in his mind, Sumu still breathed a long sigh of relief when the Nightmare Scythe was frozen in Ice Age. A sanctuary, or a shadow assassin, who has mastered shadow energy, not to mention the legendary rank, even if the digit is also the existence of the sanctuary level, it may not be able to keep the nightmare mirror, collect its information again and again, the process of deducing the battle time, and time again, even if the nightmare scythe was not the real body. Sumu thought about it finally. He accomplished the feat of defeating the sanctuary with a legend. Keeping this posture still, Sumu's heart was relieved, but his hands were not slow at all. Erosion, the unknown energy formed by talent, kept pouring out, continuously pouring into the nightmare mirror's body through his arm, and began to erode the body and soul of this sanctuary assassin. If the release of Ice Age has been maintained, naturally, there is no need to worry that the nightmare mirror will break out, but when the Ice Age stopped, he will be at ease by enslaving the nightmare scythe in the shortest possible time. As for whether this enslavement will succeed, even the evil god projection in the Principality of Sarkant resist the erosion talent, let alone a sanctuary. Sumu even doubted, even if a true god appears in front of him and erodes his talent, he can still erode and enslave it. Of course, in the early stage, Sumu had the strength to approach and touch a true god. Time flies. Unknown energy gradually took over the body of the sanctuary assassin. At this time, Sumu breathed a sigh of relief. Eroding to this point, the nightmare mirror had completely lost its ability to resist leftover. Even if the soul of the nightmare mirror was eroded smoothly, it would still die like other undead who had been contracted. Fortunately, what Sumu was worried about was not found. The unknown can successfully invade the head of the nightmare scythe and also erode the soul of the nightmare scythe smoothly. The only surprise is that, in the soul of the nightmare mirror, Sumu found a trace of the evil god's breath. The same as the evil god, but the breath is completely different from the immortal king. This breath should be the breath of the dark titan. This trace of the evil god's breath did not connect with the soul of the nightmare scythe, nor did it limit the soul of the nightmare scythe as if. This trace of breath is just an identification mark. So, this is what Willis said. After entering the sanctuary and then entering the plane of death, you don't have to bear the attacks of many monsters in the plane of death. Just in case, I'm afraid that apart from this trace of the evil god's breath, the first consul or even the Dark Titan will be alerted. After confirming that this trace of breath was just an identification mark, Sumu let the existence of the evil god's breath continue to erode the soul of Nightmare Scythe. Finally, after a full 10 minutes passed, the unknown energy completely occupied the soul of the Nightmare Mirror. What? You have gained control of Nightmare Soul. You enslaved the Nightmare Scythe. You have obtained the transfer information of the legendary occupation template, Nightmare Scythe. A crisp system prompt sound came. Nothing can prove his success this time more than the prompt of the system completely relax. Only then did Sumu consume mana, dispel the surrounding cold air, and pull out his arm from the neck of the Nightmare Scythe, and also from the thick layer of ice. The cold dissipated. With the recognition of the Nightmare Scythe, the suppressing effect of the title, master of the undead, also disappeared. Coffee hanging, taste, a crisp shattering sound came. The nightmare, sickle, which regained strength, smashed the ice layer covering the outside of his body with a light effort, and was freed from this confinement. Then, the taciturn but scheming sanctuary assassin knelt down on one knee, and a blunt voice also came. My subordinate. I see the Lord. It's not easy, feeling that most of the magic power in his body was consumed, and looking at the many damages and scars on his body, Sumu lifted Nightmare Town and chuckled. Tell this king what you know. Subsequently, in the unreserved narrative of the Nightmare Mirror, Sumu gradually understood what the dimensional demon god is and how to become the dimensional demon god. At the same time, he also told Sumu all about the Dark Titans, about the plane of death. These nightmare scythes did not know much about it. Dimensional Devil. This is another evolutionary path that is different from Fengshen. The traditional evolution is to confer gods. Start from the basic rank, cross the advanced rank, the elite rank, the warrior rank, the lord rank, the epic rank and the legendary rank, and climb to the sanctuary. At this time, the evolution of a living being or an undead has come to an end. Sanctuary, also known as the saint of the world. Even the limit of life is the limit of undead. Above the sanctuary is the demigod. If you want to step into the demigod realm from the sanctuary, you must at least obtain the most basic 1 point of divinity. With divinity, it is no longer extraordinary, but an existence in mythology. Demigods are not gods, but it is already a kind of myth. Every existence that enters the demigod realm must first face the two problems of divinity and believers. With continuous accumulation of divinity, a demigod can move from the realm of demigods to the realm of lower demigods, middle demigods, and upper demigods. By constantly collecting beliefs, a demigod can continuously transform the power of belief into divine power, maintain his own strength, and move towards a higher level. If a demigod can climb to the pinnacle of demigod realm on the premise that he has enough power of faith and divine power, he can determine his clergy, condense his own divine personality, and build his own kingdom of gods. Finally, ignite the fire of God, lift the kingdom of God high into the starry sky, and become a new god. It is the whole process of a living being or an undead being transformed from man to god. But, since ancient times, in other words, since the end of the last mythical age, many sanctuary layers have entered the demigod realm, and many demigods have tried to confer gods, but without exception, these demigods have all failed. Believers are the resources that every god must compete for, and it is also the basis for the existence of gods. When the gods are stable, and there is no chaos, no god wants to see a new god born, and no god wants to see his followers robbed. So, the former gods are the biggest obstacle to the birth of new gods. The existing gods are only the biggest obstacle to the birth of new gods, but they are not the only obstacle to the birth of new gods. From demigods to gods, it has always been difficult. It is even more difficult than advancing from the basic rank to the sanctuary. So, in this case, a new evolutionary route emerges. This evolutionary route is the dimension demon. The so-called dimension demon is the controller of a dimension while the dimension, when a demiplane grows into a completed plane, and its basic attributes are determined, it can be called a dimension. Because there is only one property, a dimension cannot develop into a complete world. Even if a soul is born, it is only a single elemental life form. The real gods control the clergy, the power, and the faith. If the dimension is abolished, what he can control is only the power of the dimension he possesses. For example, the pure power of darkness. For example, the pure force of death. Another example, the power of pure light. If a dimension develops enough, within the dimension under his control, the dimension demon may not be able to catch up with the gods, but without his own dimension, the strength of a dimension demon will be greatly weakened. So, no matter how you look at it, the dimension demons are far inferior to the real gods, unless a dimensional devil can develop and expand the dimensions he has to the extent that it is no less than the main material worlds, or even the collection of countless main material worlds. If this happens, I am afraid that the so-called true god is also vulnerable. According to Suma's understanding, the evolutionary root of dimension demon god is equivalent to the way of heaven, described in the online novels in the real world. The stronger the dimension, the stronger the demon god, who is the ruler. As Sumu imagined, if there really is a dimension, there is a powerful dimension demon, who can continuously develop and expand his own dimension world, and expand it to be comparable to a main material world, even comparable to several, as powerful as a collection of dozens of material worlds. The so-called true god is like that. Of course, this is just fantasy, at least in the information that Sumu got from Nightmare Scythe. Most of the existences who took the root of dimension demons basically stayed at the level of demiplane, a half plane, which can be big or small. The large half-plane may have a radius of hundreds of kilometers or thousands of kilometers, and the small half-plane may not even be able to match Suma's storage space. The development and expansion of dimensions has always been infinitely more difficult than the development and expansion of individuals. Just creating a half-plane and then developing the half-plane into a complete plane, the knowledge and required resources involved are beyond the imagination of any sanctuary. The results of it, a dimensional demon god with a half-plane, can naturally use extremely limited power. At best, it is to replenish himself with a steady stream of magic values, while a dimensional demon god, who can develop a half-plane into a complete plane. How much can you increase your strength? Difficulty and reward are not proportional, so even if the dimensional demon god is an evolutionary path with no upper limit, almost every demigod or even a sanctuary can embark on this alternative path to becoming a god. But in fact, in the era when the gods are overpowering the world, very few demigods or sanctuaries really choose to take this path. They create a half-plane, or a complete plane at best, and use it as their magic source or storage space, without devoting unlimited energy, time and resources to continue to develop your own dimension. More so now, to know this age when the gods are sleeping may be the last chance for those who have existed for countless years to confer a god. The restrictions of the rules of the game make it impossible for those demigods to set foot in the main material world, but they still came up with various methods, bypassing the many restrictions, developing their own believers in the main material world, accumulating the power of faith for themselves, and intending to consecrate the gods in one fell swoop in this last era. For example, the Immortal King. For example, Dark Titan. After just passing through the two main material worlds, Sumu discovered the traces of two evil gods. It is conceivable that in the many main material worlds in the game world, there are many hidden evil god believers. And how many hidden intentions to consecrate gods? Demigod. Of course, these have nothing to do with Sumu for the time being. Suma's main focus is still on the alternative road to becoming a god of the Dimension Demon. After digesting the information from Nightmare Scythe, Sumu came to several conclusions. Benefit: 1. As long as the knowledge reserve and resources are sufficient, it is not difficult to create a half-plane. Even if he hasn't advanced to the sanctuary yet, Sumu has some confidence to create it. Once he has a half-plane, he will initially become a dimensional demon god. At least, he no longer has to worry about his magic power being exhausted. 2. Becoming a dimensional demon god does not prevent you from continuing to take the road of conferred god. Even when a creature or undead reaches the level of being close to the gods, it can even directly use the dimensional world that it owns as its own kingdom of gods. Harm: 1. Input and gain are not proportional. Even some powerful demigods, at best, only create a half-plane or a complete plane. The time, energy and resources needed to develop from a plane-level dimension to a world-level dimension are enough to make a demigod go mad. In short, this is a path to becoming a god in which everyone knows that they can grow infinitely, but no one sees the hope of truly growing up. 2. After the dimensional world is created, it exists objectively. Once the dimension world is destroyed, even the dimension demons are in danger of being hit hard. Of course, this article is not only aimed at dimension demon gods, but also at true gods. If the kingdom of a true god is destroyed, then the true god is not far from his fall above. It is the information that Nightmare Sickle knows. All the information related to the dimension demon in addition, about the Dark Titan and the Plane of Death. Of these two things, Nightmare really doesn't know much. Dark Titan, he only knows to be a powerful demigod. The founder of the Undead Empire, the unfathomable first consul, is likely to be the servant of the powerful demigod. Therefore, the Undead Empire was created in the Anriel continent to collect the power of faith for it, the Plane of Death. Stepping into the sanctuary, you can freely enter the Plane of Death. This sentence is not accurate. To be exact, it is to step into the sanctuary, and the first consul will personally take action, so that the soul of the sanctuary will be stained with the breath of a Dark Titan. With this trace of breath, it is like having passed some kind of certification, and then entering the Plane of Death will not be attacked by those terrifying monsters. From this point of view, there must be some kind of connection between the Dark Titan and the Plane of Death. Subsequently, after understanding all this, Sumu left this ice and snow world with the Nightmare Mirror and reunited with Nefarian, Willis and others. Next, the old law is reintroduced. With the help of Nightmare Scythe and the efforts of Willis and other Lich Kings, 2 days later, the third consul of the Undead Empire, the Banshee King, was also enslaved by Sumu and became a member of his subordinates. So far, of the 9 consuls of the entire Undead Empire, except for the first, second and fifth consuls, the remaining 6 consuls have all been enslaved and subdued by Sumu and become his younger brothers with the territories and forces they controlled also became the territories and forces controlled by Sumu. The operation of digging the corners of the empire surprisingly smooth. Of course, the remaining 3 consuls, Sumu, were not ready to move. Not to mention the first consul and the 5th consul, who is very likely to be connected with the Dark Titan. The inscrutable second consul Rhoda Monroe alone cannot be handled by the current Sumu. Even adding Nightmare Scythe and the Banshee King. Sanctuary. 0 Ask for flowers. In this rank, the Nightmare Scythe and the Banshee King are both at the level of the lower Sanctuary. The Banshee King, who has already started to take the dimensional demon god route and initially established his own half-plane, is slightly better. And Rhoda Monroe, at least the median sanctuary. As for the first consul, at least the upper sanctuary or even the peak sanctuary. Moreover, the first consul is likely to follow the line of the dimension demon god and go farther than the Banshee King. After all, the root of the dimension demon god was originally taught to them by the first consul. Even if the road ahead is slim, even if it is difficult, the line of dimension demon god is indeed the true line of becoming a god. If there is no first consul, or if there is no dark titan behind the first consul, let alone a sanctuary, I am afraid that it will be difficult to access this kind of secret at the level of a demigod. The erosion of the Undead Empire has basically been completed. From the Nightmare Mirror and the Banshee King, Sumu also got the information he wanted, and additionally gained the new evolutionary root of the dimensional demon god. Next, in an ancient tomb just over 100 kilometers away from the Lich City, Sumu began his retreat. Dimensional Devil, no matter whether you want to take this route in the future, it is always good to have one more way of evolution and one more trump card. At least, just a half-plane can give him almost infinite magic power. If he can develop the half-plane to a complete plane, his combat power can be greatly increased. The first 2 stages of the dimensional demon god's road did not consume too much. With a full 6 imperial consuls, and more than half of the territory and resources of the entire Undead Empire as the backing, Sumu is enough to complete the construction of a half-plane, or even a complete plane in a short period of time. Of course, this is just the resource aspect. In addition to resources, taking the root of dimensional demon god also requires countless accumulation of knowledge. Even with the memories of Argus, Willis, the Nightmare Mirror, and the Banshee King, who have a wealth of knowledge, Sumu will take a long time to digest them. Ultimately, it transforms into knowledge that truly belongs to oneself. It needs Sumu to complete it by himself. In addition, the Undead Empire has a realm teleportation array. That is to say, as long as Argus and others who are far away from the Anduin continent find the boundary teleportation array located on the Anduin continent and repair it, they can reach the Anreal continent through the boundary teleportation formation. Before the retreat, Sumu used the soul connection between himself and Argus to prepare him to find and restore the realm teleportation array on the Anduin continent. The method of repair has long been transmitted through the connection between souls. Perhaps it won't be long before Sumu can see his subordinates on another continent again. He was looking forward to it, seeing each other again. To what extent will his oppression grow? Half a year passed in a flash when Argus accepted Sumu's order and searched most of the Anduin continent. With the vast army of undead, he finally found the realm teleportation array and began to repair the realm teleportation array. When Agnes complemented the Death Knights, launched wars against the human kingdom again and again, used wars to hone herself, and sprinted towards the Scourge Knights. When Kerala gradually got used to the breath of death and darkness in the dark beam of light, and with the help of the constant breath of death and darkness, she finally grew from Princess Mononoke to Queen of Ghosts. When Mist passed on the inheritance again and again, and tested again and again, he finally cultivated the inheritor he selected into a heroic position. When the undead camp players on Anduin continent, with the recruitment and approval of Argus and others, the number exceeded 1 million, and was on the way to 2 million. Anreal continent, Undead Empire. In an ancient tomb just over 100 kilometers away from the Lich City, Sumu finally started his own way of the dimensional demon god. Half a year. In the first 3 months, Sumu fully digested the memories and knowledge that he had obtained from his subordinates during the process of enslavement, and turned all these memories and knowledge into his own heritage. A total of 6 Lich Kings, a Bone Dragon Rider, 603, a Dwarf Skeleton Leader, a Skeleton Spider, a Sanctuary Assassin and a Sanctuary Ghost. These are at least legendary rank the undead, these undead that have existed for at least hundreds of years. The knowledge contained in each memory is vast. Gathering the memories and knowledge of these many undead, even in the rank of Sanctuary, Sumu's knowledge reserve and skill reserve are also top-notch. After digesting that much knowledge and memory, Sumu not only completely figured out the evolution method of the dimensional demon god, but also learned to create the runes and magic circles of the half-plane and the complete plane. but also greatly expanded himself skill library. Now, the digital display of skills stored in Suma's skill library has already changed from thousands to thousands. As long as the realm teleportation formation on the Anduin continent is repaired, and only after facing the players from the Undead camp again, he can use the second Undead skill library to open it, and reap a huge amount of experience points. According to information from Argus, the repair of the boundary teleportation array is coming to an end, and this moment is not far away. 3 months later, Sumu was completely immersed in the creation of the demi-plane. Countless resources, including magic crystals, various materials, various ores, and a large number of space runes, that have long been inscribed, have been continuously transported to the ancient tomb by the Archons, who had already been conquered by Sumu, as the resource consumption of Sumu to create a demi-plane. With the support of most of the undead empires, he doesn't need to carefully construct his own half-plane like other sanctuaries or demigods, for fear that there will be a slight error, which will lead to the destruction of the entire half-plane construction. Actually, during these 3 months, Sumu has created no less than 10 demi-planes. Create again and again, broken again and again, consume resources again and again. After the huge resources enough to support several wars were consumed, Sumu became more and more proficient in the process of creating demi-planes, and the demi-planes he created became more and more perfect and more stable. And now, with the highest quality and most precious resources and materials culled from the Imperial Arsenal, Sumu is ready to begin his 15th demi-plane construction. Create a demi-plane that can be merged by the dimensional demons. The most important thing is the energy core. This energy core is not only the core of the half-plane, but also the key to the fusion of the dimension demon and the half-plane. Such a core, Sumu just has one. That is the source of darkness. But the source of darkness at this time is no longer a holy artifact. When Sumu prepared to use the source of darkness as the energy core to construct the demi-plane, Willis, the Grandmaster level alchemist, brought his 5-headed Lich King and the dwarf skeleton leader, the Grandmaster level alchemist. The blacksmith teamed up with the legendary dwarf skeleton blacksmiths under his command. It took several months to integrate countless precious materials into it, and the source of darkness was raised from the quality of the holy artifact to the level of the semi-artifact. Even the Nightmare Scythe and the Banshee King joined forces to enter the plane of death. After searching for this high-level plane for several months, they found a precious material void crystal enough to create an artifact and integrated it into the source of darkness. The source of darkness, which has advanced semi-artifact, has great potential for advanced artifact in the future. Sacred artifact corresponding to the sanctuary. A demigod corresponds to a demigod. Even a true demigod would be reluctant to use a demigod as an energy core to create a demi-plane. After all, there is no hope in the evolutionary path of Dimension Demon God. And what about Sumu? Not only is the energy core the source of darkness, a semi-artifact with great potential for advanced artifact, but even other materials for constructing a half-plane are, at worst, materials sufficient to create a holy artifact. This is the foundation of the Undead Empire. As a huge empire that has existed for more than 200 years, there are a large number of middle and low-level undead in the Undead Empire digging for minerals and national resources at every moment. After more than 200 years of accumulation, various precious materials have been accumulated in the arsenal of the Undead Empire. Plus it's backed by the Plane of Death, not to mention the sanctuary of the Nightmare Scythe, and the Banshee King. Even Willis, an archon at the pinnacle of legend, would break into the Plane of Death from time to find some materials. The heritage of the Undead Empire, coupled with the collections of these consoles for hundreds of thousands of years. Finally, the energy cores and materials used by Sumu to create the demi-plane, this time are so luxurious that a demigod will be dumbfounded when they see it. To these, Sumu would not feel distressed. Even if these materials are used for forging, it is enough to create 1 or 2 semi-artifacts and several sacred artifacts first. These materials are not their own. Either it comes from the Imperial Arsenal, or it is the contribution of the younger brothers. Even if he knows its value, Sumu will not feel bad. Second, the stability of the half-plane as the foundation will directly affect the next growth of the Dimension Demon. The more stable the half-plane is, the more likely it is to grow into a complete plane, and it is possible to move towards the dimensional world. In this stage of laying the foundation, especially the basic stage, that directly affects his own survival and strength, Sumu naturally invests all the resources he can invest outside the tomb. It can no longer be called an ancient tomb. The entire area of more than 50 square kilometers was completely leveled by a large number of undead turning it into a super huge square. At this time, this square is engraved with countless space runes and inlaid with massive magic crystals. Just to describe these space runes and collect these magic crystals, I am afraid it will take a sanctuary to spend decades, or even hundreds of years to complete, at this time, including the 2 sanctuaries of the Banshee King and the Nightmare Mirror. All the high-level undead enslaved by Sumu have gathered outside the square, waiting for the creation of the demi-plane Zero this time T. This is the opening of an unprecedented demi-plane. Yes, unprecedented. Not only the energy core and various materials used are unprecedentedly luxurious, but even the area of this demi-plane is unprecedentedly huge. A sanctuary, even a demigod. When the demi-plane was first created, it was only a few hundred meters in size, at most a few kilometers in size. Wait until the demi-plane is created and stabilized, and then invest in various materials for expansion. What about Sumu? Just building. It covers a full 50 kilometers range. This area is truly unprecedented. If it were not for the Banshee King and the Lich King under his command, and if the Banshee King and the Lich King could all help the undead and the Lich under his command to describe the runes, the characterization of such an area of space runes alone is a difficult process for Sumu at this time. Sumu stands right in the center of this huge square. Adjust your attitude, adjust your state. When he reached his peak, Sumu took out the source of darkness that had evolved into a demigod and placed it on a small altar in front of him. A shred of soul splits, melt into the source of darkness and merge with it into a whole. Immediately after, Suma's thoughts moved, and he input his huge magic power into the source of darkness, and through the source of darkness and that small altar, it began to radiate in all directions. Suma's mana value is just a primer, used to activate the source of darkness and the altar. When the source of darkness and the altar were lit up, the huge magic value stretched along the magic lines that had already been carved on the ground. Then, on this square, which covers an area of more than 50 kilometers, a piece of magic crystal is activated. Space runes are lit up one by one. In an instant, with Sumu as the center, the silver-white space rune and the light of the dark blue magic crystal complement each other, covering the entire square in the light of these 2 colors. The space magic circle is activated. Isolation Act Start Array. At this moment, with the support of countless space runes and magic crystals, this 50-kilometer square was surrounded by an incomparably tough 5.5 strong barrier, forming a separate space. The first step is complete. Take the energy core as the core and integrate into the soul of the dimension demon. Then, with the support of space runes and magic crystals, the space within a range and the space outside are separated to form a separate space. This is the first step in creating a demi-plane. And the second step, it is to separate this independent space from the main material world. The magic value continues to pour in, based on his own magic power, and using the magic lines as the medium. Sumu constantly adjusted the massive magic crystals and space runes inlaid on the entire square slowly. Under the action of the space runes, the edge of this independent space began to shatter like a crack in space. It's like space turbulence. A trace of gray air appeared when the space runes engraved on the edge of the square all began to flicker, when the shattered space joined together and covered the entire square. In the vision of Nightmare Scythe and others, the whole piece of independent space wrapped by space enchantment slowly fades away. 159. It is gradually disappearing from this world. Successful or failed, no one knows. Among the 6 consuls of the Undead Empire, only the Banshee King constructed his own half-plane and embarked on the road of the dimensional demon god. But the half-plane she constructed was only 200 meters square, and it stayed at the level of the half-plane. Independent space is fading. It shows that the space segmentation has been successful. The main space of the Anreal continent is expelling this newly born independent space, but space segmentation is just the second step. After a piece of space is separated from the main space of the main material world, this independent space is also expelled from the main space and appears in the void ocean. Surviving is the third step in creating a demi-plane. Also, the last step. The larger the area of the demi-plane, the greater the impact of the void torrent. If it can successfully resist the impact of the energy torrent in the void, a half-plane will gradually stabilize, and as the existence of the half-plane master, it will successfully embark on the first step of the dimension demon. If it cannot withstand the impact of the energy torrent in the void, the half-plane will collapse, and the master in the half-plane will not know that it will be severely injured, and there is a danger of falling into the void and being exiled for eternity. Slowly, the shadow of independent space is getting weaker. Maybe a second, or maybe a few minutes. Unconsciously, that piece of square, that piece of independent space, that wraps the entire square, quietly disappeared in situ. Spaces that were cut and missing were quickly repaired. After a few minutes, The missing space has been repaired by the force of the world. The original location of the square was only a 50-kilometer Tiankang left. Ellen, or fail, no one knows. If it is just an ordinary half-plane creation, he can help himself to the Lord, enter that independent space and resist the impact of the energy torrent together with his Lord. 18. This is the first step of the dimension demon. The whole process can only be completed by the Lord himself, and alone. They can only pray. Pray that the space runes and the space enchantment you have created are tough enough to withstand the impact of the energy torrent. Pray that the magic crystals you have prepared are sufficient to support the continuous operation of the space enchantment and persist to the half-plane finally stabilized. Besides, they can only wait the other side. When the space enchantment was constructed and the space cutting was over, the light around Sumu quickly dimmed. In just a few seconds, the environment around him completely changed. In an independent space with a diameter of 50 kilometers, silver, white, and dark blue rays of light complement each other, illuminating the entire half-plane space, 50 kilometers away. Outside the independent space, yes, it's just pitch black. With enough knowledge reserves, Sumu naturally knew that he had left the Anro continent. At this time, he is in the void ocean outside the world's segmentation. Independence expel. When all of this is done, the space where Sumu is located has actually become a demi-plane, an independent space attached to the existence of the Anro continent. What he will face next is nothing more than the impact of the ubiquitous energy torrent in the void. After passing this level, the half-plane will be completely formed. If this level is not overcome, the demi-plane will be destroyed, and Sumu will be plunged into the ocean of void. Even though he has a body defense comparable to a sacred artifact, enough to survive in the void ocean, and wants to return to the Anro continent or the Anduin continent, he doesn't know how long it will be. In the void, there is no concept of time and space. There is no concept of direction. From a macro point of view, the half-plane he created is attached to the Anro continent. The inaccurate description is that a small ball is attached to a large ball, but if he takes one step, he may enter the Anro continent, or he may go deep into the void in the ocean. Before the strength of a demigod or even a true god, it was the stupidest decision to venture into the void ocean. Fortunately, Sumu has absolute confidence in his own demi-plane. Willis brought thousands of Lich Kings, Archliches, and Liches, and the Banshee King brought thousands of Oblivion, Wailing, and Despair, and the total was at least tens of thousands. The caster Undead of the Lord rank has worked together for several months, and has already polished every rune and every magic circle on this half-plane to the peak they can reach. This is the pinnacle of the Lich King, and the Banshee King, the pinnacle of the entire Undead Empire, and even the Anro continent, coupled with that massive magic crystal. If this is the case, it is not enough for this half-plane to resist the impact of the energy torrent, then no one can truly succeed in the evolutionary path of the dimension demon in the half-plane. Sumu stood at the center of the entire space. In front of him, the source of darkness as the core, and the small altar have disappeared as the core. When the half-plane was formed, the source of darkness and the altar were completely integrated with the half-plane, regardless of each other. And Sumu can control the entire half-plane through the trace of the soul that splits out of himself. From this moment on, he is the ruler of this half-plane, the heavenly Tao of this half-plane. He can freely control every rune in the entire half-plane, and can control every bit of magic power of this half-plane at will. When he leaves the half-plane and appears in other worlds, he can extract the energy from this half-plane at any time to replenish his energy and magic power. It is the first step of the dimension demon half-plane. Countless space runes flickered, forming a huge space enchantment, covering the entire half-plane in it, resisting the impact of the energy torrent in the void ocean. And the magic crystals, that are piled up enough to form a big mountain, are also flashing with dark blue light, constantly providing energy for the space runes and the space magic circle. Space enchantment is tough. Magic crystals are also plentiful. Sumu estimates, with the number of magic crystals stored in his half-plane, he can maintain the space enchantment for at least 2 or 3 months. In these 2 or 3 months, he does not have to worry that his half-plane will be destroyed by the energy torrent, but this is passive defense. Sumu never pinned his hopes on passive defense, nor would he tolerate the demi-plane constructed by consuming countless resources, human, material, and financial resources, and only existed for 2 or 3 months. His mind moved. The space enchantment that wrapped the half-plane began to rotate slowly. The torrent of energy in the void ocean is everywhere, like the waves constantly beating on the beach, constantly impacting this small demi-plane. It's just that every time the torrent of energy strikes, every time the waves beat, a torrent of energy is absorbed and integrated into this small half-plane. Void crystal willing to learn. This is the key to the existence of this small demi-plane as one of the most precious materials that can create artifacts. The most powerful function of Void Crystal is to communicate and transform the energy torrent in the void. An artifact made of Void Crystal will never lack energy, and when the Void Crystal is integrated into the source of darkness and becomes the core of this half-plane, together with the source of darkness, every time the space magic circle runs, it will swallow a trace of void energy. Converting these void energies into the energy that exists in this half-plane maintains the stability of the half-plane, and also maintains the operation of all space rune spaces and magic circles. It can be said, when there is a void crystal, even if the countless magic crystals are not activated, the demi-plane possessed by Sumu will never lack energy supply, and every time you communicate with the void, the quality of the source of darkness will improve a little. Even if Sumu is left alone, the quality of the source of darkness will gradually advance from the semi-artifact to the quality of the artifact. This half-plane will gradually develop from the half-plane to the complete plane. This passive development process is extremely long. With full concentration, Suma's attention was completely immersed in the control of the source of darkness and the absorption of void energy. Absorb again and again, adjustment again and again. Finally, when this process was repeated thousands of times, all the magic crystals in the demi-plane were dimmed, and Sumu completely replaced the magic crystal with the energy absorbed from the void ocean as the energy supply for the entire demi-plane, and find the best balance between absorption and defense. By this time, this half-plane has been considered stable. If it is another dimension demon, the next thing to do is to continue to invest massive resources and energy, continue to learn more knowledge, and gradually stabilize the boundary of the half-plane to form a complete plane space. The difference between the half-plane and the complete plane is not the size, but the boundary. The boundary of the half-plane is the space enchantment constructed by the dimension demon or the caster, and the boundary of the complete plane is similar to the main material world, the crystal wall of the plane wall. Only when a complete plane crystal wall is formed, a half-plane will no longer have to worry about the impact of the energy torrent in the void ocean, and a half-plane will evolve into a complete plane. At the same time, the crystal wall of the plane has the function of the crystal wall of the world. In the process of resisting the impact of the energy torrent, it continuously absorbs the energy of the void, supplementing and strengthening the energy within the 607th plane and the crystal wall of the plane. Sumu looked away. On the edge of his half-plane, the space runes in the space circles are gradually solidifying. This solidification is the process of forming the crystal wall of the plane, but this process is extremely slow. If you don't continue to invest a lot of resources, I am afraid it will take thousands of years before the crystal wall of the plane will gradually form. This is just the plane crystal wall. If you are promoted from the complete plane to the world, and from the plane crystal wall to the world crystal wall, this time, I am afraid it will be calculated in 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years. The formation of a world has always been a long time. Even if it is the so-called immortal god, its existence time is far from being compared with the world's. Creating a demi-plane is the first step of the dimension demon god. Developing a half-plane into a complete plane is the second step of the dimension demon. Expanding the complete plane into the world is the third step of the dimension demon. Or, at this time, a dimensional demon god is qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with true gods, and become a true demon god no less than those true gods. Invest in massive resources and energy. A dimensional demon god may be able to shorten the process of promoting a half-plane to a complete plane, from thousands of years or tens of thousands of years to hundreds or thousands of years. But how much resources, energy and time to invest? Only a dimensional demon can upgrade the complete plane to the world and shorten himself to an acceptable level. Its difficulty is no less than creating a world, so the dimension demon god was called a hopeless evolutionary path by all the sanctuaries and demigods who knew this route. Of course, none of this is something Sumu needs to consider now. His half-plane has just been formed, and it will take a long time to evolve from a half-plane to a complete plane, not to mention the evolution from the complete plane to the plane world. Considering these now, it would be too far-fetched. Subsequently, after the demi-plane could operate stably, Sumu opened his attribute panel only. When his eyes swept across the attribute panel, the expression on his face froze. A touch of ecstasy, inadvertently, it bloomed on his face. Staring at his attribute panel, the ecstasy and surprise in Suma's heart could no longer be expressed in words. More than half a year, because there is no monster upgrade, and no undead skill library is opened, the experience points gained by Sumu can be ignored. So, on the properties panel, his level, status, attribute, talent, and skill have not changed. The undead shaped that panel, but because after conquering the 6 archons, several new ones appeared. Undead race in addition, with the formation of the demi-plane, with the fusion of Suma's soul and this demi-plane, he also officially took the first step of the Dimension Demon. So Suma's current race is no longer Undead Race, Skeleton, but Dimensional Demon. Of course, that's not the point. A mere racial change is not worthy of Suma's joy. Anyone who has reached the end of the sanctuary and started to cross in the direction of the Dimension Demon, or the true god, its race will definitely change. The reason for Suma's shock and ecstasy is, with the successful construction of the demi-plane, a third page has appeared on his attribute panel. The first page, of course, is the attribute panel, which is the basic panel that every player has. The second page is the Undead Shape panel, which is the panel that Sumu obtained after getting the Undead transformation. At this time, he has a new panel, page 3, the demi-plane panel, or rather, the dimension panel belonging to Sumu. And the information listed on this dimension panel is the information about the demi-plane just created by Sumu. Dimension, unnamed, insufficient renaming condition. Level, half-plane. Area, 50 kilometers in diameter. Effect, energy drain. Very simple information. If there is just such an extra panel, at best it will only let Sumu know the relevant data of the demi-planes he owns. And as the master of the demi-plane, Sumu only needs to communicate with the source of darkness, which is the core of the demi-plane, to obtain it. And there are more and more detailed items than those listed on this dimension panel. But on this dimension panel, in the level column, is there a level behind the words, half-plane, 00. The level behind the demi-plane is in a slightly bright state, constantly flashing with some tiny light spots. To know, in all the panels of Sumu, all the icons in this lit state represent that it can be increased and strengthened with free points. When a skill is lit, means Sumu can use free points to upgrade his level, and even evolve into a boss skill. When an undead icon is lit, it means that Sumu can use free points to deduce subsequent ranks, transform or create a complete undead race. Now, the levels of the demi-planes are also illuminated. Doesn't it mean? Unable to restrain the ecstasy and disbelief in his heart, with a slightly trembling mood, Suma's eyes focused on the dimension panel. The level behind the 3 words, half-plane, 10 free points to invest. The level of the demi-planes has not changed. 50 free points to invest. The level of the demi-planes remains unchanged. 100 free points to invest. The level of the demi-plane quietly raised from the original level 1 to the current level 2. Next up, a roar erupted from this newly formed demi-plane. Under Suma's gaze, an endless torrent of energy was born from the void and poured into this demi-plane. This is very different from the energy torrent in the void ocean. The injection of a gentle and pure energy torrent makes the area of the demi-plane expand rapidly. Not just the area, the energy concentration in the demi-plane is increasing. At the edge of the demi-plane, the layers of space enchantments have become more tenacious. For over an hour, when this change is over, the area of this demi-plane has expanded from the original area of 50 kilometers in diameter to the current area of 100 kilometers in diameter. Even the space enchantment at the edge of the demi-plane, its strength is more than doubled. So, is this the correct way for Dimension Demon God to advance? There is a dreamy feeling. Looking at this demi-plane that has expanded several times, an idea suddenly popped up in Suma's mind. Other Dimension Demons, even if you create your own half-plane, you can only invest a lot of resources and time in a long period of time to promote the development of the half-plane little by little. And what about yourself? With the free points plug-in, as long as there are enough free points, he can almost infinitely shorten the time for his dimensional growth. Also reduces the resources required for dimensional growth, perhaps, compared with the orthodox road to conferred gods, the dimension of demon gods, which is recognized as the road to becoming a god without hope, is the most suitable for Sumu. Not just the best for Sumu. This road. It's like it was made just for Sumu. Of course, the rules of the game are just the rules of the game, and there is no independent consciousness. Even if the rules of the game really have an independent consciousness one day, the bias should be the players, or the aborigines in the main material world, not the monster Sumu, the root of everything. All from his unique talent. The first time he added points made Sumu ecstatic, shocked and absent-minded, and also let him see a never-ending road of growth and evolution. After the demi-plane is stabilized again, Sumu continued to add points, continued to level up this demi-plane with free points. With 100 free points consumed, the level of the demi-plane increased from level 2 to level 3, and the area of the demi-plane expanded from 100 kilometers in diameter to 150 kilometers in diameter. Invest 100 free points again. The level of the demi-plane has been raised from level 3 to level 4, and the space inside the demi-plane has a higher energy level, and its area has also expanded from 150 kilometers in diameter to 200 kilometers in diameter. Continue. 400 points, 500 points, 600 points, 700 points. After investing a total of 900 free points in the level of the demi-plane, the level of the demi-plane has been raised from the initial level 1 to the later level 10. The space enchantment is crystal clear. It seems that the enchantment formed from the space magic circle has become a real crystal wall. The area in the half-plane space has expanded from an initial diameter of 50 kilometers to a later diameter of 500 kilometers. Level 10. It is already the limit of the half-plane. A newly formed half-plane, on the premise that there is enough energy as a supply. It will take thousands of years to develop into a complete plane space from just being stabilized. And now, with only 900 free points input, this process is shortened to the extreme. The center of the demi-plane. Suma's mood had already calmed down. After this demi-plane was once again stabilized from the turbulent rise, from level 9 to level 10, there was no joy or sadness on his face. And Sumu continued to put his own free points into it. 1000 free points to invest. This demi-plane, which has reached level 10, has once again received the baptism of a torrent of energy. After the baptism of the energy torrent is over, on Suma's dimension panel, in the level column, the original half-plane, level 10, has quietly become small plane, level 1. The area, from 500 kilometers in diameter, became 1000 kilometers in diameter. The energy level is raised again. This independent space was finally promoted from a half-plane to a complete plane, and its edge was completely transformed from a space enchantment to a plain crystal wall. Since then, even if the dark source of the void crystal is not integrated as the core, even if Sumu no longer provides energy and various resources for this complete plane, it will automatically absorb the energy in the void ocean and grow by itself only. The growth rate is extremely slow. Dimension, and named, insufficient renaming conditions. Level, small plane, level 1. Area, 1000 kilometers in diameter. Effect, energy drain, combat power amplification. Taking a look at the new information displayed on the dimension panel, and then looking at the remaining free points, Sumu smiled slightly and continued to invest free points on the dimension panel. Starting from the complete plane, the promotion of the dimension level requires 1000 free points to increase once, but it doesn't matter. Sumu still has a lot of free points. 1000 free points invested. The dimension level has been raised from the small plane level 1 to the small plane level 2, and the energy level and area within the plane continue to expand. 2000 free points invested. The dimension level has been raised from the small plane level 2 to the small plane level 3. 3000 free points to invest. 4000 free points to invest. It doesn't seem to feel the preciousness of free points. Whenever the plane space is stabilized, Sumu will invest the next free points without hesitation. Time flies. As the number of free points on the attribute panel decreases, the level of this complete plane is also getting higher and higher, and the area inside its space is also getting larger and larger. Seem never stop. Unreal Continent. Undead Empire. Outside Lich City. More than 3 months have passed. The place where Sumu created the demi-plane. The Tianking that was born with the division of space still exists on the edge of this huge sinkhole. Nefarian, Banshee King, Nightmare Scythe, Willis, and many other Undead Empire's consuls are still waiting here quietly. For the undead with no life limit, 3 months is not a long time. Even if they are the consuls, because of the special nature of the Undead Empire, they will not delay anything. As long as the other 3 forces are not attacked actually, the Archons also have nothing worth doing in person. They are waiting for the result of creating a half-plane from the master of Zhao Ji, the king. If they succeed, everyone will be happy. If they fail, they will disappear. The first month, every consul is full of confidence, because in addition to Sumu, only the consuls who participated in the depiction of runes and in the collection of resources know how much resources Sumu has invested in the creation of this demi-plane. The second month, some consuls have begun to worry that if they are still there, if their soul connection with the Lord is still clear, they will think that their Lord has failed. The third month, except for the Banshee King, who has successfully constructed his own half-plane, the rest of the consuls have fallen into despair. There was no news for 3 whole months, and they couldn't contact the Lord through the connection between their souls. They began to wonder if the Lord had fallen into the endless void, or was on the verge of falling. When the 4th month comes, even the Banshee King fell into silence. It only took more than 2 months for her demi-plane to become stable. Although the demi-plane of the Lord is many times larger than himself, the resources invested are countless times his own. If the demi-plane cannot be stabilized for 3 months, I am afraid the magic crystal is exhausted. The demi-plane collapsed. The Lord will also be plunged into the endless void. But, same as the beginning, this is the road to the dimension demon god, and it is another road to becoming a god. Apart from waiting, can't do anything.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.